In the heart of England during the 1950s, there existed a sanctuary within the homes of ordinary people, a place where life's most cherished moments unfolded. It was the living room. But what was it about this room that made it such a central part of family life? Why did it become the epicenter of the home? The 1950s in England witnessed a unique blend of societal changes, post-war rebuilding, and a burgeoning consumer culture. It was a time when people sought comfort, familiarity, and above all, togetherness. The living room embodied these values. Let's start with its design. Typically, these living rooms weren't grand. They were modest spaces with low ceilings, dark wood furniture, and floral wallpaper. The star of the show was usually the fireplace. Often constructed from stone or marble, it dominated one wall and served as both a source of warmth and a focal point for family gatherings. Above the fireplace, a mantelpiece would hold an array of objects, from family photographs to trinkets picked up on holidays. The room itself was furnished with sturdy sofas and chairs, their cushions plumped up and covered with protective throws. These pieces weren't just for aesthetics. They were symbols of a time when craftsmanship and quality were highly valued. Beyond the furniture, the walls were adorned with framed prints and textiles. Floral patterns, images of pastoral scenes, and even hunting trophies added a touch of elegance and nostalgia to the space. These elements weren't merely decorative. They spoke of a desire to infuse everyday life with beauty and tradition. Now let's talk about the activities that unfolded within these four walls. For the residents of 1950s England, the living room was a hub of social interaction. Here's how their days typically looked. The morning began quietly. Newspapers lay on the table, their pages rustling as the family ate their breakfast. The wireless, an essential part of the living room, was tuned into the morning news, providing a soundtrack to the day ahead. As the day wore on, the living room took on a life of its own. Children came in from playing out in the street, kicking up the gravel and bringing in tales of their adventures. Mothers, often clad in aprons, would tidy up the room, straightening cushions and polishing surfaces. Fathers, upon returning from work, would unwind in their armchairs, sinking into the worn leather as they read the evening paper. Evenings were for family time. Homework was done at the kitchen table, but it wasn't long before everyone was gathered in the living room. The wireless was turned on, and the family listened to the home service or the light program. It was a time for shared experiences, whether it was the dramatic twist of a serial drama or the lively tunes of a popular dance band. Games were another pastime. Ludo pieces clicked on the carpet as children competed against each other, their laughter echoing in the room. Crosswords and word puzzles were spread on the table, challenging both young and old. The warmth of the fire and the soft glow of the lamp made the living room a comforting space, one where the family could relax and be themselves. Now, let's talk about food. While meals were often prepared in the kitchen, the living room was where they were consumed. On cold days, tea and biscuits were brought in from the kitchen and enjoyed by the fire. On special occasions, there might even be a roast dinner. The clink of cutlery and the murmur of conversation filled the room. As family members shared stories of their day, the living room wasn't just a place for consumption, though it was also a space for creativity. For many families, it was the de facto dining room. Meals were eaten at the table, often set with a crisp tablecloth and real plates. Sunday lunches might feature a roast dinner, Yorkshire puddings, and all the trimmings. Children would sit patiently waiting for their portions, while adults engaged in lively discussions about politics, the economy, or simply the events of the week. The dining table wasn't just for food. It was a place where homework was done, bills were paid, and plans were made. It was the family's command center, the place where decisions were made and lives were coordinated. For the younger members of the family, the living room was a hub of imagination. With few toys or distractions, children found entertainment in the everyday items around them. A hat became a saucepan for imaginary tea parties. An old blanket could transform into a pirate ship. The living room wasn't just a place for play, though. It was also a space for learning. Parents often sat their children on their laps as they read them stories. Their voice is echoing in the quiet room. Books were prized possessions, passed down and well worn. The smell of paper and ink filled the air, transporting the young listeners to magical lands. The living room was a microcosm of 1950s England. It reflected the country's post-war spirit, its love for tradition, and its embrace of new technologies like the television. The fireplace stood as a symbol of warmth and togetherness. The radio connected families to the outside world, and the growing popularity of television drew everyone together. Around the flickering screen, the furniture and decor spoke of a time when craftsmanship and Quality were highly valued, each piece telling a silent story of its place in family life. More than just a room, it was a sanctuary, a place where generations created lasting memories. It was the heart of the home. But the 1950s weren't the only times when the living room was the center of family life. This trend had been going on since the Victorian era, when the parlor was the place where families would receive guests and show off their finest china and furniture. After the First World War, the drawing room was where soldiers would wait to hear news of the Western Front. And in the Second World War, families would gather around the wireless to listen to the nightly news broadcasts. The living room has always been the place where families come together, and it's easy to see why. It's usually the biggest room in the house, so there's plenty of space for everyone to relax. It's also the most likely room to have a fireplace, which provides both warmth and a focal point for family gatherings. The living room is where we go to escape from the rest of the world. It is a place to relax and enjoy the company of our loved ones without the distractions of work or school. It's no surprise that so many of our happiest memories are made in the living room. We hope you enjoyed taking a trip back in time to the 1950s British family living room. If you did, please leave us a comment below and tell us what your favorite thing about this era is. We'd love to hear from you. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. Until next time, happy time traveling. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. We would love to have you back for more journeys through time. Until then, keep exploring the time vault. The wireless set sat on the mantelpiece, the gramophone in the corner, an Ernex chair pulled up by the fire, a footstool for the little ones, a wear-upon blanket over the back of the sofa. This was the 1950s living room in the UK. Welcome to the series, A Day in the Life. And let's not forget the furniture. Sofas were often simple and sturdy, covered in floral or patterned fabrics. The armchair by the fire was a prized spot, usually reserved for the father of the house. The rug on the floor was where children played, and the sideboard held the family treasures, the good china, the polished silver, or even a wireless set. These rooms may not have been grand, but they were filled with character. Evenings in the 1950s, UK living room had a rhythm. After dinner, families would gather, the fire stoked high. There might be a game of charades or the wireless playing soft music. On special nights, the television might come on, showing programs like Dixon of Dock Green or Muffin the Mule. And on Sunday nights, many families gathered for a roast, followed by quiet time together, preparing for the week ahead. For the older generation, knitting needles clicked. Letters were written and memories of the war were quietly shared. For the younger generation, the living room was a place of learning, where they heard stories, absorbed values, and built dreams of a brighter future. For the men, the living room was their domain. It was here that they relaxed after a hard day's work, read the newspaper, and conversed with family. In the evenings, they might watch television together, sharing in the popular programs of the day. Some would while away the hours playing board games, testing each other's knowledge with questions on lingo, or simply enjoy the quiet companionship of their loved ones. The older men would often reminisce about days gone by, sharing stories of their youth and the challenges they had overcome. For them, the living room was a place of comfort and familiarity, a sanctuary from the outside world. For the women, the living room was the heart of the home. It was here that they spent most of their time, looking after the children, preparing meals, and keeping the house in order. In the evenings, they would often sit down with a cup of tea and a good book, or perhaps knit or crochet while watching television. Many women were also active members of the Women's Institute, a community organization that provided them with opportunities to socialize and learn new skills. For the women of the 1950s, the living room was a place of creativity and community, where they could relax and pursue their interests while being close to their families. For the children, the living room was a place of wonder and excitement. It was here that they played and dreamed, explored the world through books, and absorbed the values and traditions of their family. The younger children would often play on the floor, building towers out of blocks or playing with dolls and toy cars. As they got older, they would curl up on the sofa with a good book, or perhaps practice the piano or learn the ukulele. For the children of the 1950s, the living room was a place of imagination and growth, where they could be themselves and explore their interests without fear of judgment. As the evening drew on, the fire began to die down and the family gathered closer together. It was a time for sharing stories, playing games, and enjoying each other's company. The older members of the family might reminisce about the day when they were young, while the children listened wide-eyed. Sometimes there would be an argument or a disagreement, but more often, there was laughter and good cheer. As the night wore on, the living room became a place of warmth and togetherness, a sanctuary from the outside world. So come, sit by the fire and enjoy the warmth of the 1950s living room, a place where families came together to share in the simple pleasures of life. What do you think? How does this 1950s living room make you feel? If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and until next time, keep those stories alive. Do you ever feel like the world is moving too fast? Your phone is buzzing, your laptop is flashing, and there are so many things demanding your attention that it can be hard to focus on one thing at a time. There are even special terms for this sort of mental fragmentation. We live in a world of distraction. But let's take a step back and look at an era when life was a little slower. The air was a little cleaner, and the bonds between families were a little tighter. Today, we're going to take you back to the living rooms of 1950s Britain, where the simple act of gathering around the fireplace created some of the strongest memories and unbreakable bonds. When we look at these black and white photos of families sitting in their living rooms today, they have a certain charm to them. The grainy images, the sepia tones, and the stiff postures of the people seem like relics of a bygone era. But it's not just the aesthetics that make these photos so captivating, it's what they represent. In an age of iPhones, Netflix, and video games, it is easy to forget that there was a time when families didn't need all of these things to have fun or to bond. In fact, some of the best memories were created during the simplest of activities. Imagine, if you will, a typical living room in 1950s Britain. The room is small but cozy. The walls are painted in soft pastel colors and adorned with family photos and knickknacks. The furniture is sturdy and well-loved. A radio is perched on a side table, ready to provide the soundtrack for the evening, and in the corner, a television set. A luxury item in those days, flickers to life, bringing the family closer together. It's the early 1950s, and rationing has just ended. Families are beginning to acquire new possessions, including televisions. Televisions were expensive and in short supply, but determined parents would often wait years to buy one. For many families, this was the only form of entertainment in the house, and it quickly became the focal point of the living room. The arrival of television in the home was a major event, and the whole family would gather around the set to watch the limited number of programs. The shared experience of watching TV together created a sense of community and togetherness that is hard to replicate today. The programs themselves were simple by today's standards, but they were entertaining nonetheless. Families would watch variety shows, comedy sketches, newsreels, and even the occasional drama. The shared laughter and gasps of surprise created a bond between family members that was as strong as any glue. Of course, the television wasn't the only source of entertainment. The radio was still a popular way to pass the time, and families would often listen to programs together while they were getting ready for bed. Music was also an important part of family life in the 1950s, and families would often sing along to their favorite tunes. The living room would quickly become the place where everyone wanted to be, and the family would spend hours just making music together. Evenings in the living room were not just about entertainment, though. They were also a time for families to bond over homework, chores, and even arguments. Yes, arguments were a regular occurrence in most households, but they were rarely about trivial matters. Instead, arguments were often about serious topics that were affecting the family, such as the economy, politics, or the war. Even arguments, therefore, were a way of bringing the family closer together, a way of airing their views and opinions in a safe environment. As the evening wore on, the family would eventually settle down to enjoy the peace and quiet of the living room. The father might read the newspaper, the mother might knit, and the children might play quietly on the floor. Evenings were a time for relaxation and reflection, a chance to unwind after a busy day and enjoy the company of loved ones. Life in the 1950s was tough, but the British people were resilient, and they knew how to make the best of a bad situation. They found ways to make their homes cozy and inviting, and they made sure to spend quality time with their families. The living room was at the heart of this, a place where families could come together and enjoy each other's company, without the distractions of the modern world. So the next time you find yourself alone in your living room, surrounded by all of your gadgets and gizmos, take a moment to appreciate the simple things in life. Remember the families of the 1950s who found joy in the simplest of activities and made the most of the time they had together. Who knows, You might just find that the secret to happiness is not in the latest gadget or the newest fashion, but in the warm glow of family and togetherness. Thank you for joining us on this journey back to the UK 1950s when the family living room was the warm heart of the home. If you enjoyed this nostalgic walk down memory lane, don't forget to subscribe to Time Vault Chronicles for more stories from the past. And now tell us in the comments, what do you remember about cozy family evenings? Or if you weren't there, what do you imagine they felt like?